Discover the incredible truth about true wealth, a heartwarming, life-changing journey revealed. In the heart of a small Midwestern town, where life often felt as predictable as the seasons, Sarah stood behind the counter of the local diner. The clattering of dishes and the hum of conversation enveloped her like a second skin. At 32, she wore the fatigue of 2 part-time jobs like a heavyweight championess belt, a testament to her resilience. Each night, after serving food with a smile, she would return home to her 2 kids, Emily and Jake, who greeted her with hugs, their warmth melting the chill of exhaustion away. Every embrace was a sweet reminder of why she endured, why she fought so hard against the raging tide of financial struggles that threatened to sweep her under. Yet beneath the surface of this tight-knit community, whispers of a growing divide echoed off the diner's walls. Families like Sarah's felt the sting of newcomers with deep pockets and high hopes, while some scoffed, blaming her for not trying harder. But those who truly knew her admired her indomitable spirit and kindness. They saw the heart of gold that blended seamlessly with her sharp wit, a beacon in a town where hope sometimes seemed fleeting. One fateful night, clouds gathered, and the storm rolled in, fierce and unrelenting. Sarah watched from her window as the wind howled and the rain hammered down, fear creeping into her chest for what the storm might bring. But the community rallied together. Despite her meager resources, Sarah found herself lending a hand wherever she could, though some looked askance, seeing only a waitress someone unworthy of acknowledgement. Yet it was in those moments of chaos that an unexpected spark ignited, a light flickered and revealed her hidden talent for baking. Years ago, she had spent countless afternoons in the kitchen with her late mother, crafting pies that melted hearts. The smell of cinnamon and apple filled her mind, awakening memories of laughter and love. So Sarah decided to host a baking night at the community center, pouring her heart into each recipe. As she set up, a flicker of doubt roared in her mind: would anyone come? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The evening arrived. The scent of her sweet pastries filled the air as townsfolk, who once dismissed her, now gathered around her creations. They tasted the history embedded in each bite, the resilience, the love. Laughter and conversation bubbled over, knitting them together as they shared stories over a plate of warm cookies. But just as acceptance began to bloom, an opportunity emerged. Her pastries were selected to represent the town at a state fair. Tremendous fear gripped her. What if she failed? Standing in her kitchen, flour dust swirling like ghosts of the past, Sarah felt the weight of doubt pressing, her heart pounding like a drum. Could she embrace this spotlight, show them that true wealth comes from love, family, and the courage to rise against adversity? Just as she exhaled, trying to anchor herself in this moment, an unexpected knock echoed through the silence. Who could it be? A friend, a doubter, or perhaps someone with the power to change everything? Sarah paused, the flour dust settling around her like a fragile mist. The knock echoed again, firmer this time. Her heart raced as she approached the door, uncertainty swirling in her mind. She wondered if it was one of the familiar faces from the diner or if it was a stranger bringing news that could alter everything. Opening the door, Sarah was taken aback. It was Lydia, the town's former mayor and a revered figure, standing there with an elegant scarf wrapped around her neck and her hair neatly styled. "Sarah!" Lydia exclaimed, warmth radiating from her. There was a sparkle in her eye that made Sarah curious. "I heard about the baking night and the upcoming state fair. I wanted to see you there. A chance for something wonderful here." Sarah sighed, her voice trembling. "I'm just nervous, Lydia. What if they taste my pastries and think they're awful?" Lydia stepped inside, brushing past the threshold as if claiming her space. "Nonsense. You are creating magic with those hands, and it's time the whole town sees it. We need to show everyone what true wealth is. You've already brought us together, let us take it one step further. Taking a deep breath, Sarah felt a flicker of hope in Lydia's words. But it was quickly smothered by the weight of her fears. What if I mess up? I can't afford to fail now, she said softly, her gaze dropping to the floor. Lydia placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Listen, darling, everyone has doubts. But this is your moment. You have a gift, and the world deserves to taste your love in those pastries. Let us make a plan together. With determination fueling her spirit, Sarah nodded. As they discussed how to showcase her baking, excitement began to bubble inside her, chasing away the shadows of doubt. They mapped out ideas for a booth at the fair, planning how to present not just her pastries, but the story woven into every recipe. It felt like a spark, something deep within her reigniting. As the days passed, Sarah poured herself into the preparations. The kitchen became a whirlwind of creativity and laughter, Emily and Jake cheering her on, even sneaking bites of cookie dough when they thought she wasn't looking. They were her motivation, her reminders that love and family were at the heart of every creation. However, an unsettling thought lingered in her mind. What would happen if she poured her heart into this fair, only to be met with indifference or scoffs? What if her failures overshadowed her triumphs? Despite the small victories, the fear never truly left. The night before the fair was filled with both excitement and nervous energy. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and sugar, but Sarah felt anxious knots tightening in her stomach. She could hardly sleep, tossing and turning as visions of triumph and failure danced through her mind. Then, as dawn broke, Sarah awoke to the sound of laughter echoing through the house. Her children were up, already bustling with energy for the day ahead. Their innocent excitement injected a rush of courage into her. Today was the day. As she dressed and prepared to leave, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back was one of determination, a warrior ready to face whatever the day might bring. With her heart racing, she grabbed her apron and headed to the door. But just as she reached for the knob, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Lydia, reminding her of a final detail regarding the booth setup. Sarah could feel her heart thrumming as she read the last line, "Win or lose, remember that true wealth is in the journey, not just the destination." Could she truly accept that wisdom? As she took a deep breath, she wondered how the day would unfold and if this journey would indeed celebrate the wealth of love and community she cherished so deeply. With that thought lingering, Sarah stepped out, ready for whatever awaited her at the fair. But little did she know, the day would unfold into a whirlwind of surprises that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her place in the world. What awaited her at the fair? The fairgrounds were alive with a symphony of laughter, music, and the enticing aroma of fried foods. Sarah stood near her booth, her heart pounding as she watched vendors set up their colorful displays. Her own little stand was a humble affair, lovingly decorated with white tablecloths and a bright banner that read Sarah's sweet treats. As she arranged her pastries, neatly glistening with icing, her nerves collided with excitement. This was at the moment she had been building toward for weeks. She remembered Lydia's words and tried to breathe through her anxiety. Emily and Jake flitted around, their energy contagious. Emily was busy handing out flyers. She had made brightly colored sheets with smiling emojis and messages of encouragement, while Jake proudly donned a "I love Mom's pie" t-shirt. Sarah couldn't help but smile at how eager they were to share her creations. As the crowd started to gather, she felt a lump form in her throat. What if the people saw her pastries and found them lacking? What if no one came to her booth? Each thought was like a stone weighing down her spirit. Then, just as she was about to spiral into doubt, Lydia appeared, her presence like a soothing balm. "Sarah, look at this crowd. This is your moment. Trust in your talent," Lydia said, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. With each passing minute, the whispers around her booth grew louder. People peeked in, curious eyes scanning the colorful array of pastries, lemon tarts, chocolate eclairs, and her beloved cinnamon rolls. "They look amazing," a woman said, leaning closer to inspect. Sarah offered a tentative smile, her hands trembling as she reached for a cinnamon roll. "Would you like to try one?" she asked, the words spilling out before she could stop herself. "Yes, please." The woman's excitement fueled a flicker within Sarah. As she handed over the treat, she found a small stash of joy hidden within her fear. The woman took a bite, and Sarah held her breath. The seconds felt like an eternity until the woman's face broke into a wide grin. "Oh wow, this is incredible. You have to try this," she called out to her friends. One by one, more people approached her booth, drawn in by the enthusiastic gasps and exclamations of delight. Sarah felt her heart swell. Each bite taken was not just about the pastries, it was about the connection forming between her love for baking and the joy she could spread. But then, a shadow flickered across his face. Across the way, she spotted a familiar figure: Mark, the town's most critical food blogger. He watched the scene with an ever-skeptical expression, arms crossed, and Sarah's stomach twisted. He seemed to float between curiosity and disdain, as if he couldn't decide whether to approach or retreat. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple. She had always valued his opinion, and the thought of him judging her pastry sent another wave of doubt crashing over her. Suddenly, he strode toward her booth, and the crowd parted like the sea. Every gaze fell on Sarah, she felt every heartbeat in the space around her. "What do you think you're doing here?" he inquired, an eyebrow raised skeptically. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Would he bash her pastries? What had cut her dream down in one fell swoop? Gathering her courage, she faced him squarely, her heart racing. "I'm sharing my passion," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I want to show everyone the love baked into each recipe." Mark's expression softened slightly as he paused, and the crowded atmosphere seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. What would he say next? But with those words, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of strength, a clarity in her mission. Maybe true wealth wasn't just about the pastries. Maybe it was about the community, the connections, and the courage to share her heart. As Sarah awaited Mark's reply, uncertain but hopeful, she realized she was ready for whatever came next. Would his verdict help her rise even higher, or would it test her resolve in ways she never imagined? Mark shifted his weight, still scrutinizing her, but his expression softened even more. "You're passionate, I'll give you that," he finally said, glancing at the crowd that was now buzzing with excitement over Sarah's treats. "But you know I'm here to tell the truth, right? Are these really good enough to stand out?" Sarah's heart sank momentarily. Her palms grew slick with anxiety, and her voice faltered, but she steadied herself, recalling the countless hours spent perfecting each recipe. "I've poured my heart into these pastries," she said earnestly. "Every ingredient was chosen because it means something to me. It's not just about the taste, it's about the memories and moments they create." Emily, overhearing their exchange, jumped in. "Mr. Mark, you should totally try one. They're the best," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with youthful enthusiasm. Mark raised an eyebrow, and before Sarah could object, Emily grabbed a tray of cinnamon rolls, practically glowing with excitement. "You have to try the one with cream cheese icing. It's my favorite." The crowd, now buzzing, leaned forward in curiosity. Sarah watched as the food blogger hesitated, caught off guard by the innocent charm of a child's recommendation. Finally, he relented, accepting the treat with a tentative smile. As he took a bite, the world around them faded for a moment. Every whisper, every eager glance settled into a silent waiting game. Sarah held her breath, her entire universe caught up in this one moment. The seconds stretched like an elastic band, each tick of the clock reverberating in her chest. Mark chewed slowly, his expression shifting from skepticism to contemplation, and then back to surprise. He seemed to genuinely savor the flavor. "Okay, wow," he muttered, as if he couldn't quite believe his own words. A ripple of tension fell from Sarah's shoulders. The crowd erupted with chatter when Mark took another bite, his surprise evident. "This is really good," he finally admitted, and Sarah felt the thrill of validation wash over her. "But it's more than that. There's something here, something real." The crowd surged around her booth, their eager faces bright and passionate. "I told you!" a woman shouted, and others chimed in, excitement bubbling through the air. But just as Sarah's heart soared, Mark raised his hand for silence. "I have to write my review," he said, and the buzz quieted. "You have good treats, Sarah. But you'll need to share your story more, to show people what makes them special." The words hung in the air, trailing a thread of doubt through her newfound joy. How could she tell her story? Could she really open up about her past, her struggles, everything that had brought her to this moment? But before she could spiral too deep into thought, Mark continued. "When I think about wealth, I see you sharing these. But I also see a woman who is still figuring out her place. You need to own that story, too." Sarah's heart pounded. She hadn't expected this. No, the thought of unveiling everything her journey was terrifying. What if no one wanted to hear it? She wondered silently, glancing at Lydia, who gave a little nod of encouragement. As Mark began to jot down notes, Sarah could feel the doubts creeping up again. She wanted this, wanted to be more than just the woman behind the counter. She wanted everyone to find a piece of themselves in her pastries just like she had. But could she summon the courage to do it? The fear mixed with determination, igniting a fire inside her. Maybe it was time to truly open her heart, to let her story be as inviting as her cinnamon rolls and tarts. With a breath as deep as her dreams, Sarah took a step toward Mark, her voice firm. "You're right. I have a story to share, and I want to tell it right here, right now." Cheers erupted from her small gathering, but Mark's skeptical yet intrigued expression spurred her on. What truth was waiting within her, just beyond the pastries? Would she dare to reveal not only the sweets but the bittersweet truths of her life? The crowd's cheers filled Sarah's ears, a whirlwind of encouragement that pushed her forward. She felt their eyes trained on her, full of anticipation for something real, something more than just the pastries. Mark's expression was one of cautious curiosity, and that made her heart race. "All right," Sarah began, trying to steady her voice. "I grew up in a neighborhood where food was not only essential but also a way to connect. Every Sunday, my family would gather around the table and share stories while we made our favorite recipes. Those gatherings were magical. I learned to knead dough with my grandmother, who always said you could feel love in every roll and fold." She took a moment, letting the memories wash over her. The smell of fresh bread, laughter echoing through the house. It felt as if she was unearthing a treasure, one she had buried under layers of doubt and fear. "But as I got older, life changed." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "We lost everything when my parents divorced. My mom struggled to make ends meet while keeping the kitchen alive with her passion." She caught Mark's eye. Every bite of those meals was like a prayer for better days ahead. Sarah noticed the crowd's undivided attention. Their faces were painted with sympathy and understanding. Emily's glowing smile turned into a serious look of concern, reminding Sarah of her own worries. "After my mom passed, I was left with a kitchen full of memories and a heart heavy with grief. It took me years to even think about baking again. But when I finally did, it was more than just making desserts, it was about reconnecting with my roots. Each recipe carries my history, the pain, the joy, and most importantly, the love." As she spoke, a fire ignited inside her. Words flowed more easily now. "But it wasn't until I decided to start this little booth that I realized how much I wanted to create that sense of belonging for others too. The flavors I crafted were a way to reach out, to say, you're not alone." Mark nodded slowly, his pen hovering over his notebook, caught up in Sarah's narrative. As she continued, her heart lightened further. I want my pastries to remind others of their own stories, their connections to family and friends. That's what makes it all worthwhile to create something that brings people together. Just as Sarah finished speaking, a wave of applause erupted, shattering any remaining tension in the air. Mark looked impressed, his skepticism fading away. That's it, Sarah. That's the story that people will remember. You just painted a beautiful picture with your words. Her heart soared at his approval, but in the back of her mind, doubt whispered again. What if it's not enough? What if they don't care about my past? Emily chimed in, you brought us all here. We want to hear more. You're our pastry hero. A laugh slipped from Sarah's lips, melting away the lingering uncertainties. It felt good to share, to reveal pieces of herself that had been locked away. But with his encouragement came a realization too, she wasn't just sharing pastries, she was inviting people into her journey. As Mark prepared to take his next bite, she could sense he was on the brink of something deeper. Would he consider her pastries worthy of his wide-reaching platform? Let me share something too, he said suddenly, a new warmth in his eyes. When I first started in this industry, I didn't think I had a story either. But transformation begins with vulnerability. And letting people in, his voice trailed off, leaving the door ajar for an unexpected revelation. The emotional connection was palpable, and Sarah could feel it shift the atmosphere. What would he say next? What experiences lay beneath his tough exterior, waiting to be uncovered? The air thickened with tension as everyone hung on his next words, all eager to unearth not only Sarah's journey but perhaps his as well. Mark's gaze drifted to the crowd, taking in the hopeful faces staring back at him. There was something about the moment that called to him, urging him to dig deeper. He cleared his throat, the weight of his impending words settling heavily on him. Sarah leaned closer, the urging support of the crowd wrapping around them both like a warm blanket. When I was younger, I was more focused on success, he admitted, his voice steady but soft. I thought the only way to prove my worth was through accolades and the size of my bank account. I hustled for years, pouring every bit of me into my work, thinking that if I had the right career, if I was well known enough, it would somehow fill the void. He paused, the sound of a faint rustle from the audience reminded them of the intimacy of this moment. The crowd hung on his every word, as if even the air held its breath in anticipation. And then I faced a loss. Mark's eyes dropped, the vulnerability of that admission cracking through his usual tough exterior. My sister, she was my rock. She battled her demons, and I was too busy chasing dreams to see how much she was hurting. When she left this world, it shattered me. It took losing her for me to really understand the meaning of true wealth. There was a palpable silence that followed, and Sarah's heart twisted as she absorbed his pain. She could sense the room shift, an electric connection binding them all together in their shared struggles. I spent weeks wallowing in regret, Mark continued, his voice thickening. But then I realized something. In those moments of darkness, it was the memories of laughter with her, the shared meals, the stories that brought us together that mattered most. I learned that life isn't about how much money you make, it's about the people you share your time with, the relationships you build, the love you spread. That's when I turned to food. As he spoke, Sarah recognized the parallels between their journeys. Both of them had faced loss and struggled to find their way again. In a strange way, they were kindred spirits. I wanted to create a space where people could come together and foster connections, Mark said, glancing at Sarah again, a spark of understanding passing between them. Just like you do with your pastries. I want my work to echo what I failed to grasp before. His eyes shone now, a mix of hope and conviction. Finding wealth in love and connection, what a powerful thought. Applause erupted once again, the crowd's energy infectious. Emily's face lit up with pride, and others nodded in agreement, their murmurs supporting the authenticity of both Sarah and Mark's revelations. But even as the dazzling lights of applause flared around them, Sarah felt a pang of apprehension. What if our journeys aren't enough? She asked internally, the whisper of doubt lingering. Despite the warmth flooding through her, a question hung ominously on her mind. Did it matter how they shared their connections, or rather if they could nurture what they had uncovered within? Mark glanced at Sarah, a knowing smile breaking through his serious demeanor. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? You can never know who will resonate with your story. But sharing is the first step. You've already ignited something here. With newfound courage swirling in the air, Sarah took a moment to embrace this invitation to openness. But could she really embrace vulnerability and share the rest of her story? She clutched the edges of the table, a sense of urgency building inside her. What more could she reveal that would impact others? What if this chance was leading to something greater, a deeper community that went beyond her pastries? The crowd's excitement buzzed around her, but her heart raced with the question, would sharing more about her journey finally bridge the separation she felt, or was there still more truth hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right time to emerge? As Mark's words hung in the air, Sarah wrestled with her thoughts. She glanced at him, the warmth in his smile urged her to step forward. Just as he had opened his heart, surely she could do the same. But the weight of her own secret sat heavily on her chest, like a storm cloud threatening to burst. The soft murmurs of the crowd enveloped her, a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers trembling against the table. It was in moments like these that connection blossomed, and if she shared her truth, perhaps it would resonate just as Marcus had. Maybe I can do this, she whispered to herself. With a gentle nudge, she turned to the crowd. I believe we all have something to share. Loss, regret, love, these are feelings we all understand. Her voice found strength as she continued, I lost someone too. My mother. She was the heart of our family, always bringing us together with her cooking. After she passed, I felt like I was drifting through a void. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I didn't know how to fill that empty plate at the dinner table. I buried myself in baking, thinking it would numb the pain. It did at first, but then something beautiful happened. I realized that every time I baked, I was doing it for her. Bringing joy back into the world was my way of honoring her. The crowd listened intently, leaning in as if Sarah's words were an invitation into the deepest chambers of her heart. I started to host bake-offs, community gatherings where people could come and connect over food. And each pastry I made carried a memory, a laughter, a moment shared. It was in those gatherings that I began to feel whole again. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle around her. Mark nodded, a look of understanding reflecting back at her. I learned that our connections define our wealth, just like you said, Mark, she added, her heart swelling with gratitude for his encouraging presence. When we open our hearts, we create communities filled with love, support, and yes, even healing. The room erupted in applause, and the energy was electric. There was laughter, nods of agreement, and smiles all around, a palpable sense of belonging washing over the audience. But amid the joy, a flicker of fear ignited within Sarah. She had opened the door, but what lay beneath the surface? Memories of her mother tugged at her, intertwining with fear of losing the newfound connection that now pulsed through the room. What if I can't maintain this after tonight? She thought, a frantic pulse in her veins. Mark stepped forward with a reassuring smile. You've built something wonderful here, Sarah. But remember, it's okay for it to be a journey. One step at a time, together. His words enveloped her like a gentle hug. But just as warmth blossomed in her chest, doubt crept back in. As Sarah gazed out at the sea of faces, she was comforted in knowing she had touched them, but in the back of her mind lurked the possibility of failure. Will this community endure? Will I be able to keep sharing my heart? She pondered, her smile flickering. As the applause faded, she took a shaky breath, recognizing that the real journey had only just begun. Would she embrace the vulnerability of sharing her past and foster the connections blooming around her? The question loomed tantalizingly, a door half opened, inviting her to step through into an unknown but hopeful future. And just like that, she felt the weight of new beginnings press against her heart. What would happen when she took the next step? Would it lead her to the truth she sought? The crowd began to dissipate, laughter and chatter echoing softly in the warm evening air. Sarah stood at the table, feeling the aftershocks of her revelations ripple through her. Although she had shared her heart, uncertainty still lingered, a shadow sidling up next to her unexpected sense of warmth. Mark lingered for a moment, his smile persistent, as if he sensed the turmoil beneath her calm surface. "You were incredible tonight," he praised, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't realize how many hearts you've touched." "Thank you," Sarah murmured, her smile fragile. It felt like a fragile balloon, just waiting for the wrong word to pop it. As the final clinking of chairs echoed in the background, Sarah packed them up slowly, processing Mark's words. Part of her felt empowered by the honesty she had shared. But another part feared the vulnerability that came with it. Do you think I can keep this going?" she asked, darting a glance up at Mark, seeking reassurance. "Absolutely," he responded with unshakable confidence. "Every bake-off, every gathering, will bring you closer to that community you've started. And you won't have to do it alone." The thought of forging ahead with this new sense of purpose tugged at her, sparking a flicker of hope. But doubt whispered its insidious reminders. "But what if they're just here for one night? What if I can't keep them coming back?" Mark's brow furrowed slightly. "That's the fear we all carry, isn't it? But what matters is what you do with that fear, Sarah. It can either hold you back or propel you forward. You've offered them a piece of your heart tonight. Just keep sharing. Your honesty will draw them in." He stepped back, giving her space, allowing her thoughts to tumble through her mind like leaves in an autumn gust. The community she had envisioned, could it sustain itself? Was she ready to nourish it as she would a growing plant? As the night deepened, she decided to turn those thoughts around. She remembered her mother's soft laughter and the way she had brought people together. Her heart swelled again with the memories, the bittersweet mix of grief and love. A sudden thought struck her. What if she shared this experience with her community, opening up about her fears? Would that be the very thread that stitched them closer together? The realization hit her like a burst of sunlight through clouds. She wouldn't just be bringing people together through baking, she'd be sharing pieces of herself. When she allowed her vulnerabilities to guide her, she could inspire others to do the same. "Mark?" she asked, enthusiasm beginning to flicker in her voice. "Yeah. I think I know what to do next. I want to share the ingredients of my journey, all of them, the fear, the hope, the loss. I could host a night just for that, a night where we all reflect not just on the sweetness of food but of life itself. What do you think?" "I think that sounds incredible," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. "A platform for honesty and vulnerability. You'll be surprised how many people want to share their stories." The rush of inspiration coursed through her as she turned back to the crowd, her heart still drumming with mixed emotions. This was the birth of something new. But as she prepared for her next move, wondering how to spread the word and who might be the first brave souls to join her, a quiet voice whispered inside her, what if the memories of her mother were too heavy to carry into this next chapter? As she finished packing, the whispers of doubt began to swirl again. Would she be brave enough to let others see the rawness of her truth? With a heart full of hope yet tinged with fear, Sarah gazed into the dimly lit parking lot, feeling the world around her pulse with the possibility of what was to come. Would she find the strength to transform her sorrow into a beacon of connection, lighting the way for others? Or would the shadows of doubt overshadow her purpose? The next chapter awaited, whispering promises of discovery and connection at every turn. The sun sank lower, casting a golden hue over the parking lot as Sarah exhaled slowly. The anticipation of her next event bubbled beneath the surface, almost overwhelming her. She needed to channel this energy, this burst of creativity, into something tangible. The challenge was clear: how to craft an invitation that would resonate with her community and urge them to share their stories. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her from her thoughts. The text from Mark popped up: "Let's brainstorm ideas over coffee? I believe in you." The corners of her mouth turned up. Maybe she wasn't alone in this. With renewed determination, she dashed towards her car. She wanted to bounce ideas off Mark, to share this fire igniting within her. He had a unique way of seeing the world, and she hoped his insights would spark more possibilities. When she arrived at the cafe, the familiar smell of roasted coffee beans swirled around her like a comforting embrace. Mark was already seated at their usual corner table, a steaming mug cradled between his hands. His smile was warm and inviting, echoing the atmosphere of the evening. "Hey there. Feeling inspired?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with eagerness. "Absolutely," Sarah exclaimed, sliding into the chair across from him. "I want to create a night dedicated to sharing our fears, our hopes, everything. But I need help figuring out how to bring people in, how to make it less daunting for them." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "Vulnerability can be tough. Maybe start by sharing your own story. You're opening the door for others to come in." Her fingers fiddled with her coffee mug as she thought about his words. Could she truly bare her soul to a group? What if they don't connect with what I share? What if my past becomes a wall instead of a bridge? Mark leaned forward, earnest. "Sometimes what we fear can bring people closer. They need to see the real you, your struggles and triumphs. It's what connects us as humans." As she took a long sip of her coffee, she felt the heat spread through her. Perhaps he was right. Sharing her story, with all its jagged edges, could be the first step in building this gathering into something powerful. "What about the name? It needs a spark," he prodded, sitting back as he contemplated. "Maybe Life's Ingredients? It reflects both baking and our experiences." The title tasted sweet on her tongue, as if it carried potential. "I love it." He grinned. "Now, how about a theme? Each person could bring a dish that represents a piece of their story." The idea bloomed like a spring flower. "Yes. We could invite everyone to share snippets like a potluck of narratives." They tossed around ideas, their excitement bubbling over. With each suggestion, Sarah felt like she was pulling threads of connection from a distant loom that finally began to weave into something beautiful. Once they settled on the framework for the event, Sarah felt a little lighter, the weight of her silence beginning to lift. Yet, the fear still lingered. Could she really encourage others to open up? And what if the memories of her mother surfaced stronger than she anticipated? When they finished their brainstorming, Mark leaned in, his expression sincere. "Remember, Sarah, honesty breeds community. You have a gift, and sharing it is your strength. You're not just telling your story, you're inviting others to tell theirs." Who would show up for her journey? Who would dare to step into the rawness she was preparing to uncover? As she drove home, doubt slithered back in. Would she be brave enough? Would her honesty resonate with others or scare them away? The night sky sparkled above her like the glimmer of hope she wished to ignite in everyone. She parked in her driveway, heart racing, a blend of fear and exhilaration coursing through her. Was this truly the beginning of something profound? And if she stumbled, who would catch her? Could they? These questions loomed large as she headed inside, the next chapter of her life peeking around the corner, waiting for a courageous leap into the unknown. The day of Life's Ingredients finally arrived, and Sarah woke up with a mix of excitement and dread swirling in her stomach. She could hear Emily and Jake laughing in the kitchen, the warmth of their joy rushing through her. It reminded her that whatever lay ahead, she wasn't alone. As she prepared the last few pastries, she felt the weight of her mother's spirit with her, wrapping around her like a soft embrace. Each recipe she baked was infused with memories, stirring the dough, rolling it out, and even getting flour dust everywhere. All those moments spent in the kitchen brought her solace. It was time to share that love. The community center buzzed with energy. Tables covered in colorful tablecloths were adorned with dishes ready to share their stories. Sarah's heart fluttered as she set up her section, nestled between two other booths, filled with familiar faces. When the clock struck 6, the room was filled to the brim. Neighbors, friends, and even a few skeptics filled the chairs. Mark stood by her side, his demeanor calm as he mingled with the crowd. The lights dimmed, and Sarah's pulse quickened as she took a deep breath. This was it. Welcome everyone to Life's Ingredients. She called out, her voice steady with conviction. Tonight, we're here not just to share food but to share stories, our joys, our struggles, and the memories that shape who we are. The crowd erupted into applause, and she felt a wave of encouragement wash over her. As the first guest stood up, introducing their dish and story, Sarah saw their vulnerability spark a chain reaction. Each story shared wove a new thread of connection, illuminating the beautiful tapestry they all formed together. She watched a young woman speak about her grandmother's recipe for chicken soup, her voice quivering with emotion. Others chimed in, laughter and tears breathlessly exchanged as food and memories flowed freely. Then it was time for Sarah to take the stage. Heart pounding, she approached the microphone, thoughts racing. I've spent my life hidden behind the counter of a diner. For so long, I thought I was just the waitress, but I've realized it's not just the food, it's the stories we tell through it, she began. After losing my mother, I felt broken, lost in the kitchen we once shared. It was only when I began baking again, each recipe a reminder of our cherished moments, that I began to heal. Her voice cracked slightly, feeling the edges of her vulnerability. I learned that food carries history, affection, and life itself. Every bite is a moment we get to relive together. The crowd listened intently, and she could sense their energy shifting. They were with her, in it together, the joy, the sorrow, every emotion mingling in the air. I invite you to find pieces of yourselves in every pastry. Bring your stories to the table, just like we are, she encouraged, glancing around the room at all the eager faces. There was an overwhelming wave of support, an unspoken pact forming with every story shared. The room buzzed with connection, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah felt truly seen. When she returned to her booth, Emily and Jake rushed to her side, their beaming faces igniting a warmth within her. They had listened, soaking in every word and relishing the stories shared, and Sarah realized her simple act of sharing had brought new life to her community. As the night stretched on, people mingled, sharing pastries amongst themselves, their laughter rising into the rafters. Sarah felt the weight of her fears begin to evaporate. Ties woven from shared stories held them together stronger than any pretense of success or failure ever could. It was the act of connecting that counted. When the evening began to wind down, Mark approached her with pride radiating from him. You really did it, Sarah. You brought the community together in ways I never expected. Bravo. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't sting. They sparkled with gratitude, recognition that she had found her place, anchored not in overwhelming success but in heartfelt connection. Thank you, Mark. I couldn't have done this without your support. Underneath the laughter and the warmth of the evening, something new was blooming, a sense of belonging that reached deep into her heart. She had embraced her fears and transformed them into an invitation. As the last guests trickled out, Sarah lingered for a moment, glancing around the empty room. The tables, now scattered with crumbs and plates, felt like the remains of a joyous feast. She could almost hear the echoes of laughter, a promise hanging in the air, a promise of new beginnings and unwavering community. When she made her way back home, her heart swelled with hope. She parked the car and stepped out, breathing in the crisp air. Standing before her house, she realized that true wealth wasn't just in achieving dreams, it was in moments like this, moments woven with memories, connection, love, and the courage to share stories. As she stepped inside to her sleeping children, she felt a radiant smile grace her lips. Sarah was no longer just the waitress behind the counter, she had become the heart of her community, just as her mother had taught her. It was time to continue building bridges, nurturing connections, and carrying her love into every pastry she created. Now, more than ever, this journey felt like a vibrant tapestry, stitched with threads of honesty, vulnerability, and the spirit of those around her. A journey waiting to unfold. And in the dim light of her living room, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." Now, if you don't want to miss the next exclusive stories, you need to subscribe now. Leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm with your support, and comment below your feelings about this transformative journey. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation in action. Your support means the world, and only true fans understand its importance.